15, we'll call this meeting to order. If I can ask our County Administrator, Mr. Meadows, if you'll lead us in invocation and allegiance.
Sure, if we could rise for a moment of silence, and then I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Let us pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. First up, presentation, recognitions, and awards. And I see that Mr. Clark here is with the Virginia Department of Transportation, making his way down.
He was in the room earlier. You must have had to run out and run back.
Well, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
This will be a bit briefer than normal, I guess, because this is the end of our fiscal year, and we're just trying to stretch every last, trying not to overspend more than we probably already overspent. So it's been a lot of just sort of routine maintenance activities going on. Still trying to ditching and patching in front of the paving. Now, the paving schedule is not affected by the end of year. You know, that's a different kind of schedule. So this is just our normal residency maintenance budget that is subject to this sort of end of the fiscal year, trying to come in within our allocations. So it's been a little bit of different things here and there: ditching, patching. Have got some brush cutting, and mowing will start in earnest here pretty soon. We got behind on mowing, but we did that so we could do our ditching and patching. The contractor mowing will start here pretty soon. We have done some sight distance type mowing or brush cutting at some intersections, but other than that, it's been mostly just those ordinary routine maintenance things. This 114 speed study has been sent to local law enforcement for comment, so that's a good step. It's out of the study phase and just in the kind of collaboration we do with local law enforcement. So when we get any comments or ideas back from them, we incorporate them if necessary, and it'll still have to be signed and sealed by a professional traffic engineer, but we're getting there. And really that's about it for the updates. Like I said, end of fiscal year, we're getting our final little maintenance things done, and looking forward to the new allocation beginning July 1.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Clark. We'll go around and see if any supervisors have any comments or questions. And we'll start off with Supervisor DeMont.
I don't. Thank you very much.
Supervisor Bond.
Just want to thank you for the ditching you did on Woodland Hills Drive. I particularly liked it. My neighbors didn't, but I like the new grass that we have in the ditch. So other than that, thank you for everything.
And I did get some of those potholes at the end. I know
Yes.
the timing of it may not have worked out.
Oh, it worked out
Okay,
great.
did it good? Okay.
It really did.
See how it holds in the hot
I
weather
know,
here.
right? Thank you.
All right, Supervisor Fidzikowski.
I only have one thing. A few months back, I had brought to your attention some drainage issues right there on the straightaway, right at the intersection of the little road that goes up to the elementary school. Did you ever get it in any?
I looked at that myself, and it's a lot of. We're gonna have to probably pull the plans on that to figure out where that drainage goes. It looks pretty complicated, actually, with various drop inlets on either side of that entrance. It might be that we could if we just kind of dished it and cleaned out, because there's also a lot of debris and trash and stuff like that in there. That may be what's clogging it up, and not necessarily a problem in the drainage system itself.
Yeah, I figured that eventually that water's got to head to the river.
Yeah.
But I looked at it too, and I can see where there's a pipe goes over to the median, but then I don't see where it goes from there.
I walked around all that time trying to figure it out. So I'm gonna have to look at the plans on this.
Okay. All right. Appreciate it.
Supervisor King.
Just one thing, I know we sent you email about see if y'all could check the ditches up on Walton. And just wanted to know if y'all had a chance to go up in there and look.
I'm not sure. I'll have to look. On Walton Road, which part?
Coming off Radford side.
Off the
going
Radford.
up through there.
Okay.
All the way up.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Vice Chair Biggs.
I don't have anything, but I do want to thank you for, I continually see potholes that are filled. And so thank you so much for that and for all you do with the resources that you have. Thank you.
And Mr. Clark, again, thank you for that update on the speed study. It's been a while since we moving right along with it. Want to thank you, and again, remind everyone that June is Slow Down, Move Over awareness, especially with VDOT workers, and make sure that while all the construction's going on, that people do slow down in our work zones and keep everyone safe. And we thank you. Is there any other follow-up? Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Dave.
Next, under presentation, we have Goodwill Industries of the Valleys. And I think we have Miss Mindy Boyd. Welcome.
Okay, do I just push the? Okay, perfect. Good evening, Madam Chair and Supervisors. Thank you for allowing me to present to you this evening. My name is Mindy Boyd, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Goodwill Industries of the Valleys. Today, I'm excited to tell you a little bit about how we've embarked on a reimagined future and provide an overview of our new strategic plan, Inspire 2026. But before we talk about where we're headed, we need to talk a bit about where we've been. Juggling a couple different slides here, sorry. In 2021, Goodwill Industries of the Valleys celebrated our 90th anniversary. 90 years of serving communities, families, and individuals here in Christiansburg. Our retail store and donation center has been open since the late 1990s, and it still thrives today. But oh, how the last few years have been during a pandemic. And we learned how to deliver services in a hybrid model. For several programs, we've continued to offer a virtual option. The benefits of proven relationships. Throughout the past 2 years, we truly reaped the benefits of community partners and partnerships. Like so many others, we also learned to work in a hybrid model and the benefits of an agile workforce. Whether they were keen or reluctant, our team members proved to be so connected to our mission, they never missed a beat. And that's key, the fact that our team members never missed a beat. So much so, it turned out to be a great year. In 2021, we served over 38,000 individuals through our various training programs and foundational services. Folks gained over 2,900 credentials, and they were earned by people in Goodwill programs. We placed over 650 individuals in competitive employment, and we made a concerted effort to continue to deepen our connections throughout our service area in an effort to inform and inspire. In March of last year, we welcomed our new CEO, Richmond Vincent. Richmond is well established within the Goodwill movement. Prior to joining us, he was the CEO of Goodwill of South Mississippi, headquartered in Gulfport, and he had previously served as a member of the executive team at Goodwill of Central and Northern Arizona in Phoenix for more than 6 years. During this leadership transition, we felt it was very important to focus on the future by looking at our history. And at that 90-year mark, we decided to go back to our roots and re-examine the why behind what we do. Our founder, Edgar J. Helms, began Goodwill with a vision of not charity, but a chance. He believed in giving people the opportunity to work as a path to both financial and personal independence. Such independence was key to combating poverty by providing a hand up and not a handout. Using our rich history as a cornerstone, we then began to explore a series of questions. How can Goodwill Industries of the Valleys make a difference in the next 90 years, and what role will we play? How can we make an even greater impact on communities, families, and individuals? So to answer those questions, we embarked upon a rigorous planning period spanning more than 6 months, and that resulted in a robust 5-year strategic plan. In August, the results of internal and external surveys were reviewed by the executive team, board members, and community partners throughout our territory. Those present provided feedback on our new vision, mission, and purpose statements, and began to draft high-level strategic goals. The vision statement stakeholders were inspired by the most was the very same vision our founder, Edgar Helms, was inspired by when he started the first Goodwill in Boston in 1902 to eliminate poverty. Yes, in defining our why, we went right back to our roots. And while we know we can't accomplish this single-handedly, nor necessarily in our own lifetimes, we believe our work, all efforts, should be directed towards decreasing poverty among those we serve and employ. Supporting this vision, the revamped mission statement conveys three powerful statements, and they are empowering individuals, strengthening families, and inspiring communities. Our vision to eliminate poverty is supported by data within our territory. Over 215,000 individuals in the Goodwill Industries of the Valley service area live in poverty. Locally in Montgomery County, I believe our statistic is a little over 19%. Specific populations such as minorities, Hispanic Latino families, working individuals with a disability, and single mothers are also experiencing very high poverty rates. Several counties and cities in our service area have poverty rates above 20%, and our very own employees live and work in these areas. Clearly, poverty is a pervasive issue throughout our footprint and one we are compelled to address. Goodwill team members also weighed in on initial surveys and provided valuable input. Our employees indicated they valued a company committed to community engagement, excellence, diversity, and learning, while also providing opportunity for growth. These traits also arose in external survey results, and as we began to define strategic priorities over the next few months, we knew we had to ensure the internal, external shifts were aligned. So let's take a look at the plan. Our vision to eliminate poverty in Virginia is what fuels us. As you will see, all four strategic goals align our resources to meet community needs. They focus on areas of operational strengthening, people strengthening, greater community impact, and improved collaboration. Recognizing we can only address higher level needs when basic ones are met, we've decided that investment in operation is key. The three primary objectives in this goal include strengthening our infrastructure, strengthening internal processes, and developing a self-funding model to sustain mission impact. For this goal, as with each of the others, we identified key and performance indicators or measurements for the success of this. One such infrastructure goal is to upgrade our technology. Also, the goal to become more self-funded allows us to make better, more customized service decisions for the residents of our expansive territory. These measures, as well as the full plan, are available on our website. At the heart of our new strategic plan are our team members. They are the very individuals we aim to empower, part of the families we aim to strengthen, and members of the community we want to inspire. We recognize the need to improve the financial health and stability of our own team members, particularly those in our stores and in our business services area. We will also work to provide better benefits at a lower cost, invest in the development of our team members, and provide coaches and support to help them overcome obstacles and advance within Goodwill. And finally, we are taking steps to move all team members to a living wage or greater. So while the first two goals are internally focused, the last two are external. Data tells us that individuals thrive when the entire family thrives. Goodwill is implementing a multi-generational service delivery model to help everyone, from expectant mothers to older workers. This does not mean we will deliver every service to everyone, but we will concern ourselves with everyone within a family system so we can connect them with the resources necessary for each person's success. Our Goodwill Business Services Division also provides job training and employment opportunities. Goodwill Business Services is the business-to-business segment of Goodwill, providing outsourcing options for local manufacturing and light industrial business, a key component of the New River Valley. Through this business arm, we can train and match individuals with barriers to employment and train them to have an opportunity for higher skilled positions right here in the New River Valley. This approach is good for economic development and for those that we serve. Local to the NRV, we are serving adults in programs such as Good Care, our training program for nursing, ranging from CNA through RN. Also, the Senior Community Service Employment Program provides jobs and job training for adults 55 and up. Through Career Development Services, we deliver WIOA Adult and Youth and the Summer Youth Employment Programs in Giles County. and all of these programs are ripe with potential for expansion. And finally, as mentioned before, we will also work to make sure our own team members have economic security as well. Currently, Goodwill team members in entry-level positions, such as retail, production, and custodial, start off at more than 18% above minimum wage in the state of Virginia, and we plan to maintain that trend so that our own employees can work towards earning a suitable living and progressive wage. Let's see. I have to go back one. And now our last goal. A consistent theme in the feedback we received from stakeholders was a need for deepening of our engagement in the areas that we serve. The desire for Goodwill to help develop strategic relationships and build resource capacity. Most importantly, to listen and gather information on emerging needs, interests, and priorities of community members, as well as business and community leaders throughout our territory. Going forward, we will be actively seeking opportunities excuse me, to collaborate with stakeholders who are aligned with our vision, and we will be intentional in those communities that need a convener in order to deliver coordinated services. Our objective is to lead that coordinated service delivery model in at least one community of need in the next 5 years, in a targeted, measurable effort to move the needle on poverty. All of which takes us back full circle to our vision, eliminating and certainly reducing the poverty rate in our service area. And to tie it all together, what does our new plan mean for the communities that we serve? It means collaboration, deeply engaging with communities and addressing issues that impact poverty. It means leveraging resources and expanding opportunities for our team members and those we serve. To end, the overarching theme is delivering the right resources to fill service gaps and increase opportunity access for all. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we are also in the final stages of purchasing the property where our Christiansburg store and our learning center is currently located. We are so excited not only to be a long-term retail resident here, but now a property owner in the area, now under grand revitalization. So that's the plan, but before we end, we decided to refresh our approach and renew our focus, and that needed to be visible. It was time for a facelift. If you haven't already, we invite you to log on to our new website where you see all of this information and more. Our new way forward needed a fresh look, which is reflected in the image on the website and in current advertising. You will begin to see these beautiful images shown here of our very own employees, shoppers, and supporters in our stores and training centers as well. To end, we think this video sums up who we are and where we're headed. I very much appreciate your time and attention, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. We'll go around and see if any supervisors have any questions. We'll start off with Supervisor Bone.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you and your leadership, as well as what Goodwill does for our community. Have a couple of questions. Do you know how long Goodwill has been in Montgomery County?
I believe the store opened in the late 90s, 96 to 98 time frame. I think we signed the documents on it, but it didn't open until around 98.
No other services are in Montgomery County other than the retail store, is that correct?
No, we do have, right where the retail store is, just beyond that, on that same parcel, is a learning academy. And there, we've done a variety of things over the years. But one of the things we're working on now is the Good Care Training Program. So anyone who wants to enroll in a free of charge to them when they qualify. If they want to go from CNA, LPN, RN, they can enroll in that program.
That's great.
We also have quite a few job training programs going on for youth and adults in the county. They do vary depending on the time of year.
Could you give an example?
So a lot of what people come for is if they have any type of disability and they need to learn job skills, they'll come and they're assigned an employment specialist, and that person works through a lot of soft skills training. And then they partner with, we have several different partners around different localities who accept job training individuals, and so they'll then begin them on a job training path. They'll go to work, and that employer partner agrees to hire that individual with a job coach. So the job coach will then go on site with this person until they feel like it's time that their skills are built enough that they can start stepping away, and then that person become more independent.
And if someone wants to participate, not business-wise, but as an individual, what kind of qualifications do they need to have in order to participate?
It really is such a wide range. We work with individuals who have barriers to employment, which are either cognitive or physical disabilities, but then anything from someone who may be laid off from a job and needs to identify a new career path, anyone who maybe has not been employed for many years, wants to get back in the workplace. We help people with resume building and everything in between. We have a pretty good youth program in the Giles County area, and one that we'd love to duplicate in the New River Valley. Lots of partnerships with high schools, any Prevoke. We've been trying to work with Radford City Schools so that we can start to train people for work before they exit high school.
Switching subjects, could you tell us why it's a good idea to own the property that you inhabit at this point?
Sure. Anytime you are in business and you are leasing, you are putting money into a property that then you don't earn as an asset. Whenever you purchase, then the expenses for a mortgage then are much less typically than rent, and then eventually you pay that note off. So with that, we are able to then utilize what money we would have been continually putting towards rent to put that right back down to our bottom line, which then goes back into mission service. We're working very hard to become more self-funded. That means less dependence on federal grants and other types of public funding, so that we can control if there's a federal grant that comes down the pipeline that we qualify for, but the need in our area isn't as significant, that we're not dependent on that grant to serve people. We can customize who we're serving based on the need in the area. So the more those stores can funnel to that mission, the broader of an impact that we can have. So your expenses ultimately on occupancy are much lower.
Are they lower on day one when you own it, or is it more expensive to own it than to lease it?
Typically day one, it is less. When you go into leasing with a landlord, depending on what square footage you've agreed to pay, and we've been in that property for some time, so it escalates over many years. Typically, a mortgage payment is going to be less. In this instance, I believe we're looking at closing in July on this property, and I've already seen the pro forma on the property, and it will begin performing better day one.
So you'll actually be able to do more programming by owning your facility.
It's not our desire to own every property. In fact, that's just not wise, but we would probably like to own somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40%. We own about 20% of our retail stores now in the 35 county footprint.
I enjoyed meeting your CEO a couple of months ago. I've had the opportunity to visit your Radford facility as well as your Salem facility. I've been incredibly impressed, and I think that local businesses, many local businesses don't realize the gem that we have in, let alone individuals in our county too. Do you all still sell books on Amazon?
We actually are broadening. We do some on Amazon, but the fees on Amazon have just become increasingly higher. So it's becoming a challenge. We are transitioning to broaden, or I guess diversify where we sell books. We do on a couple other platforms like ABooks or Libris, but there's a new platform coming called Goodwill Books, so it's just exclusive to Goodwills and books. And that platform should be coming, I would say, within the next 30 days.
Pretty great. Thank you so much for everything you do.
Thank you.
Supervisor Fujikowski?
I don't have any questions, but I appreciate you coming and giving us your strategic vision. And it's always good information because we don't really hear a lot about it. So I thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
Supervisor King?
I have no questions, but I just want to tell you I appreciate everything that y'all do for the citizens of Montgomery County and surrounding areas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Biggs?
Did you get April?
Oh, I'm sorry. Supervisor DeMont?
That's okay. I don't have any questions. I do really appreciate your presentation and you coming here to share the work that you've done with your strategic planning process. I wish you the best of luck with achieving your goals. It's very admirable, and we really appreciate the work that Goodwill does in our community.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, Vice Chair Biggs.
I want to thank you for everything you do also, and I know how hard it is to do the strategic planning and all of that. I was in the workforce development meeting last week when we were trying to look at that. I just have one question. I heard you say you were going to identify a community of need.
Yes.
How would you go about identifying which community to start with?
So I'm in operations, so I'm sure I'll be involved in that at some point, but that's typically within our mission services. That's their area of expertise. So typically they'll look at a lot of different demographic information. So what is the poverty rate? And then what are the available services to address that? So if you look at some of our more impoverished areas, almost 3 years ago now, we merged in about 2/3 of the Danville Goodwill that was struggling. And so we know that that area struggles with jobs. We look in the Henry County market, but of course we will look across all territories. So what will happen is in territories where we feel like we can be a player, but there's an array of services already, we'll try to work together more as a collaborative group of nonprofits. But hope, and there's an area across the 35 counties where there isn't the access to an array of resources, and perhaps we can be a bigger player to bringing some of those to the community. That's to be done by year 5, so I'm not sure they've started that process yet. But I know it'll be a rigorous evaluation.
But that's exciting.
It
Thank
is
you.
exciting, yeah. Thanks.
Ms. Boyd, thank you for the presentation. I love it. I love the video. That's good, very good. What will you do? That's great. Can you explain to me a little bit on the good care, the nursing? What type of educational are you talking about? You all do training, coaching? Is it a scholarship to help them getting to nursing, students getting to nursing school?
So originally, Good Care came to us through a federal grant, which was a 3-year grant. And we operated that grant here locally for that time period. And at the grant expiration, we took a review of that entire program and decided that its success was definitely defined by the responsiveness and the amount of people who actually succeeded in the program. And it was one that we needed to address, we needed to keep. In order to do that, we've taken on that program beginning in this year, 2022, as one of our self-funded programs. So that's fully funded by Goodwill. It is in partnership with educational institutions. So all of those partnerships that were established through the federal grant have now continued through Goodwill's funding.
Very good. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for what you do for the citizens of Montgomery County.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is public address. Let me go over the guidelines. This is our time to listen to citizens. If you wish to speak, you'll observe the policies. Each citizen will have 4 minutes to speak, whether speaking as an individual or a representative. All comments must be directed to the chair and to the Board of Supervisors from the speaker's lectern. Member, you'll begin by stating your name and address. Debate between speakers and members of the audience is not allowed. Speakers may leave any written statements or comments to the supervisors with the board clerk. Speakers will be judged out of order. Should you speaker engage in any personal attacks, use of profanity or abusive language, or debate with the audience and not address the supervisors? We have a sign-up sheet, so I'll go on the list on the sign-up sheet, and then after that, we invite any citizen that'd like to speak to come forward. If you'll say your name and your address. The first person we have is a Patricia, and I may pronounce this wrong, Kaladisic? No, okay.
Hi, my name is Patricia Kalatosti, and I live at 1580 Taylor Hollow Road in Blacksburg. And I am here to speak about the zoning changes on the short-term rentals. First, it looks like that you have changed the bed and breakfast homestay and to just bed and breakfast inn, and added a short-term tourist rental provision. One issue is that you've restricted the bed and breakfast inn to say you have to live on the property or on the adjacent property. However, if you wanted to do short-term tourist rental, you can't live on the property or on the adjacent property. That's rather restrictive, especially given some other restrictions that you've added. You've essentially taken this possibility away from a fair amount of properties in the county to do any type of short-term rental. First one, I'll talk about the bed and breakfast inn. It says, and it said for a while, it said shall provide full-time management when the facility is occupied. Kind of understand that. That does require, if you're going to be away, that you would have to then hire somebody, and that's a business expense. It also has said in there that you may provide food, and now there is, but you don't have to if it says may. And then now under that, you've added a provision that says you shall meet the Virginia Department of Health requirements for food service. So if you choose not to provide food, why do you have to meet the Virginia Department of Health requirements for food service? And there's no if in that second one. It doesn't say if you have to want to provide food. It just says you shall. It also says that you shall be located on a public road. There's an awful lot of properties in this county that are accessed through deeded right-of-ways where the deed states that you have ingress and egress for the benefit of use of that property. So now if you live on a property that you access through a deeded right-of-way, so you do not have road frontage, you cannot do either a bed and breakfast inn or a short-term tourist rental because you can't live on the property if it's a short-term tourist rental. And if you access through a deeded right-of-way, you can't do bed and breakfast inn. So you've essentially restricted a whole lot of properties in the county, and I don't know if that was your intent in the way this was rewritten. Let's see, short-term tourist rental. Maximum residence is in there, and this is a whole new section. So, and it says that this is based on Virginia Department of Health permit. Does that mean you need to get a Virginia Department of Health permit? Or is this based on your septic permit, which are not available for a whole lot of properties? I've been to the Department of Health, the septic permit for my property. They just looked at me and said, we don't have them from that time frame. It's not an old property, it's not an old house. They don't have a lot of them. The Virginia State Fire Prevention Code, you have to meet this. Well, what section? That's a pretty big document. Having local points of contact for complaints, for unruly residents. Isn't that typically handled by the sheriff's department? I mean, if you're in the county, I'm not quite sure where that's coming from. When you have in there as well, like points of contact for utilities, if you're a good business owner, you're renting out a property for 3 or 4 days or a week, you're gonna have that. You know, if the plumbing backs up, here's my list of people to call. And then the final one on there, local phone service connection. Most people don't have landlines anymore. I don't think Verizon's interested in maintaining them. I gave up my landline because the static on it got so bad. I would call Verizon, they'd send someone out, it would fix for like 3 hours, and then it would be staticky again, and I finally told them, go away, I don't want this anymore. I doubt they'd hook it back up again. So I'm not sure what the provision is in there. There are sections of the county that do not have reliable cell phone service. If you live there, there's gonna be some type of connection to the house. There are a fair amount of properties that are built that aren't built with phone service. And a lot of places don't have cable available. So I'm not sure where that was coming from. And let's see. So yeah, just to sum up, I'm not sure exactly. The restrictions on these seem like you are restricting a lot of properties in the county.
Ma'am, I think your 4 minutes is
okay,
up. I
thank
think
you.
we're also having some technical difficulties here.
I was just noticing the lights on the dais aren't working, so
Okay.
for subsequent speakers, when you get down to 1 minute, I'll give you the 1 minute and then.
All right, I don't have anyone else sign up, but if anybody would like to come forward, if you'll state your name and phone number, name and address. Probably don't want to give your phone number. Name and address, please come forward.
Hello, my name is Sean Gaynor, 345 Warren Street in Christiansburg. And I just want to talk to you guys today about some concerns that I have. After high school, my son Eric moved out of the house as he went off to college. A few short years later, an adult in all of our eyes, he entered the workforce. Our day-to-day times spent together had dwindled to weekly, and then weekly, then monthly, and now finally, it's when we get a chance, as he currently lives some 5 hours away in another state. While in his early 20s, we sat there cleaning up after a racquetball tournament one Saturday afternoon, just the two of us. The tournament was over, and we were the last ones, just lingering about, losing time in conversation. My son turned to me and he said, "Dad, I have something I want to tell you." I beckoned this announcement and he continued. He went on to tell me of how he had gained insight of his college roommates and how their fathers were not an important part of their lives. He went on to tell me of how much he appreciated all the time I spent with him growing up. Tears came to my eyes as I embraced and told him how much I loved him and how proud I was of him for becoming the man that he is today. Family's always been of utmost importance to me and is only second to God, something instilled in us by our mother as she struggled to raise us three boys. I believe in spending time and raising my children in the way that they should go, so that when they are old, they will not depart from it. Time is key. No money can replace time. We must invest in their future by spending time. Family time is so important. Engage in conversation. Look into one another's eyes. Smile at each other and enjoy the smile that returns. One evening while spending family time over dinner, my daughter had something to say. She, being a 12-year-old middle schooler, wanted to share what she learned at school. The statement that came out of her mouth still shocks me to this day. She said, "Poppy, we learned about the 5 different types of sex in school." My wife's eyes got big as she looked into mine as if to telepathically ask, "What are you going to say?" My 10-year-old perked up, eager to share in this new knowledge. Without any visual display of my feelings one way or the other, I turned back to her and said, "Oh yeah, what is that?" She then went on to tell me that there's vaginal sex, anal sex, and oral sex, and she couldn't remember the other two right now. Perhaps she did in fact remember, but was too embarrassed to say what they were. Just my assessment. She continued telling me of how they had a guest speaker come in and talk to them about relationships, and she called this person a transvestite. This brings about concern to me, as I know it must to the majority as it falls upon maiden ears. What ensued was a family conversation invoking morals and values passed down to us by our parents when we were young. The next day, I went on to look into and found that across the country there are many schools who are having biological males enter the classrooms of our elementary schools dressed in what we have considered women's clothing my entire life. Some even in clothing or outfits of fictitious characters with horns and capes. But they're just having story time with our elementary school children. I later went on and pulled the Virginia SOLs for 7th grade family life education to see where there was any mention of these things. I saw recognition of development. I saw importance of saying no to premarital, abusive, or inappropriate sexual relationships. I saw identification and avoidance of societal messages pertaining to sexuality. I saw awareness of the consequences of teenage intercourse, including diseases and pregnancy. What I did not see, however, was any place where it directs anyone to instruct or arouse the curiosity of my 12-year-old daughter to delve into various forms of what most would call perversion. Not in Montgomery County, right? Open your eyes and think again. I implore you today to push for and stick to what has been taught for years in a health education classroom and to not push ideologies which bring harm to the family unit. Perhaps this seems minuscule to some, but I trust that we all know the largest bush takes yield from the smallest seed. Thank you for your time.
Sir. If anybody else would like to come forward?
Good evening. My name is Joanne Price, Blacksburg, Virginia. And I'm here to talk about education. I have a slide here that shows a very important quote from Mike Rowe. It says, "We're churning out a generation of poorly educated people with no skill, no ambition, no guidance, and no realistic expectations of what it means to go to work." That's what's coming out of our educational system. But I want to talk about what's going on inside that system. After producing over 3 generations of indoctrinated kids, these tragic results produce death in our children, in our families, in our communities, and our nation. Death to traditional values, death to the God-given plans for the life of every human being that leads to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's death to the will. It is more perverted thinking, out of control emotions and behavioral problems, and lifelong corrupt morals. Let's look at the slippery slope. The slippery slope shows exactly what's going on in CRT, what's going on in SEL, what's going on in the curriculum. It starts out with, let's get married. There's 2 males. Bake our cake. Use our pronouns. Allow minors to dance for us in drag. Let teachers choose your kid's gender. That is not education. That is indoctrination. This slippery slope is a threat to safety and emotional well-being. And it comes from the school board and the Board of Supervisors, because you have oversight. And if you do not stand in the gap with parents who want to protect their children by refusing the triangle of death, and of course MCEAs, the unions that's supporting it, we expect you as elected officials to do the job that we elected you to do. And that is stand strong, be bold, and be courageous against this agenda. Reject all federal and state funding with these programs attached. Stop bringing destructive values into the lives of the most vulnerable citizens, our children. The Bible says, whoever causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. So it is the duty of every school board member, Board of Supervisor member, to protect every child from harm. Children are harmed emotionally and mentally daily in Montgomery County schools. For some, it is bullying, being beaten up for no reason, ostracized by teachers for having traditional values. Pride Month is celebrated for an entire month. No other event is celebrated for an entire month. There's also a desecration of the rainbow. The rainbow is a religious symbol to Christians. So actually, religion is being brought in the school, except that our religion is being desecrated in front of us. So for Christians, it is a reminder of his loving kindness and his faithful word. The next time his word declares, it will be destroyed by fire. The world will be destroyed by fire, not by water. For us, it's God's covenant. It's not man's pride. And therefore, since the school board has implemented this long-running plan of destruction of public education in Montgomery County, parents who do not want to fund this wickedness and want to protect their children must have
Ms. Price,
county
your time is
voucher
up.
option.
Thank you. If anyone else would like to come forward, if you'll state your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Bob Beard. I live here in Christiansburg. Tonight, I want to talk a little bit about the unions. We're facing a serious battle with the schools. With the unions. They're trying to get into our school system, and we want to talk about what it cost us. Okay, so first of all, they keep on saying they want to give the teachers a seat at the table. Well, when I look at this right here, the teachers already have a seat at the table. The school board has done a great job monetarily of taking care of our teachers, and so has the board of supervisors. You guys have given the teachers a raise 2.5% to 3% the last 6 years. Plus, you're getting additional bonuses. So money shouldn't appear to be the issue. We have things that they wanted to negotiate, smaller class sizes. The average class size is 20 students per class in Montgomery County. Well, what's optimal class size? How you going to go smaller than 20? You want, and also there's in the past there was expenses teachers had to afford to buy supplies. Well, now there's an online ordering platform for that expense, so the teachers are taken care of. They already have a seat at the table. The unions will take a parent's seat away at the table. So now let's talk about money. Okay, the union is saying that they want to increase teacher salary by 5%. That means another $6 million that you guys will have to add to the budget to do that. Or on top of the raises you guys already given them, this additional $5 means $6 more million. Well, how are we going to pay for that? All it means is a new taxing system, because the union will run roughshod over the school board and making sure they get those funds. And if not, what happens is if you guys decide to stand up and not give them the additional monies, that means you're going to have to let go of teachers and have larger class sizes. So it's a no-win situation for Montgomery County. Okay, now let's talk political. Okay, so they claim to be an apolitical organization. They don't get into politics. Well, here they created a PAC for Linwood Hudson for school board. Okay, so now he's up there going to vote if we should have a union. That doesn't quite seem right. It seemed like the deck is stacked. Here he is again. Now he's with Chris Hurst. Okay, here he is offering, soliciting advice from Glenn Chilcote, who's president of the union, and asking for advice on pride and other matters. Okay, so. Okay, and these are all posts from their Facebook page, guys. Here's one from another one. Vote for candidates endorsed by local and state union. Okay. Here's another political candidate. And then that was going against Jamie Bond, who opposes the union. So they're trying to get people in who all support the unions. Okay, so now we have another person, April DeMott, who's part of the board of supervisors, who's humbled and honored to announce that I received the endorsement of the Montgomery the MCA. Okay, again, we got Mary Biggs congratulating Glenn on a great presentation, and we have her talking about what a great event she attended. Now we also have this post that parents in Montgomery County School District want to improve anti-racist policies. Guys, have you guys had anybody come up here and say that Montgomery County has racist policies? I've been going to school board meetings for over a year now. I have not heard one person say that Montgomery County has racist policies. I want to know what they are. You guys need to know what they are. If they're making these type of posts and accusations that Montgomery County has racist policies, we need to address it. Okay, here we are. Here we have New River Uniserve, okay, and MCA. My time's up.
Thank you, sir. Your time is up. Thank you. You'll state your name and your address, please.
Bob Barbetti, Reiner. Let's think about public education in our county. By most accounts, MCPS, the system, is doing a commendable job, unless we consider the following. Loss of learning during the pandemic with no obvious plan to repair that. Large and increasing annual costs, $14,000 per student. Really? Many employees so dissatisfied they want to unionize. Parents' rights ignored by policy and practice. A focus on social justice and vague equity issues, both derived from Marxism. Student indoctrination to deviant gender thinking. Teaching that our country is built on racism. Students cannot read cursive, let alone write it. Students cannot communicate in grammatically correct language. Students do not know real history. Students know nothing about our Constitution. Students cannot make change or write a check. More attention to pride flags and spaces safe from criticism than a hardened school protected from an active shooter. A lack of transparency by administration. Example, no information back to the Board of Supervisors for weeks at least about the use of specific dollars allocated by the Board of Supervisors for salary increases. Bullying using race tactics within the school board. Denying a teacher-led political statement, pray for peace, remember that, while allowing a teacher-led organization, MCEA, to endorse, advertise, and campaign for candidates for local office. Heard enough? I could go on, and that's from less than a year of observing board meetings. Does this sound like an effective or trustworthy part of our county infrastructure? Let alone commendable. This simply adds insult to our citizens who are already enduring the injury, paying taxes for public education, and then having to pay again for homeschool, private school, tutoring, or mental health services. Time to give the power back to the parents with vouchers, grants, scholarships, and let the public school compete for the money. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Hello, if you'll state your name and address, you'll have 4 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Kim Bowman, and I live in Christiansburg. And growing up, I was taught to respect all authority, except when doing so would go against the will of God. When you have power that is not properly overseen, it becomes abusive and intrusive. We all know that absolute power absolutely corrupts. We have seen this played out over and over again throughout time. This is why we must have checks and balances. It's up to the authorities that we, the people, have seated you to instill trust through your decisions, through your actions, and through your spending of taxpayer dollars. We expect you to make the right decisions. The things that have been brought before you tonight have undermined and eroded the trust that was placed in each of you when you were elected to serve we the people. You have the opportunity here to do the right thing. There is a reason that families are rushing to homeschool co-ops and leaving the public school system. There is a reason that teachers are leaving public education. And it's been laid out for you here very plainly tonight. They are disgusted with the deviant indoctrination of our children and the lack of real education. Our children's innocence is being stolen at the very hands of the people who are supposed to protect them. We want our children to be educated, not indoctrinated. Why are you making decisions with taxpayers' money, having never seen a line item budget? This is known as due diligence in the business world. Is this just another way to hide the deviant backdoor agenda that is being shoved down our children's throats? As a citizen, a taxpayer, and a businesswoman, I would certainly like to know. I sit on the boards of several organizations, and I would never vote on a budget without knowing the details, because it's my job to be a good steward and to lead those organizations in a way that both best serves the organization and the people they serve. All of these things stand in the way of exceptional education. Furthermore, we are sick of powerful teachers' unions that place politics and their own self-interest above our children and their futures. We, the people, have placed our trust in you. Please do the right thing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Alicia Vaught. I live in Christiansburg. I want to start out tonight by reading the 2020 vision statement by the Board of Supervisors. Montgomery County is a friendly, caring community distinguished by its vibrancy and diversity. Our strong workforce is known for its skills and intellectual capital. While our community is grounded by its deep roots in traditional values, we foster a high quality of life by offering quality citizen services, including educational and recreational opportunities. So you agree that it's very important to have traditional values, and so do we. We agree that too. But that's not what's being taught in our schools. We don't have traditional values being taught to our kids in schools. As you've heard here tonight very clearly, we don't have education in our schools. We have indoctrination, and it's bad. It's really bad. Our kids do not feel safe going to schools. We as parents, we don't feel safe sending them there. And that's the truth. Right now, we are having a fight about collective bargaining that's happening. As you can see from this, the union does not want the vouchers. They don't want the vouchers at all in the schools, and I kind of have a feeling that I know why. But I want to just read to you briefly from Governor Youngkin's education report that they just had back in May. It made an irrefutable case that this state has not been serving its students well. They drew several conclusions from that report from all the data that they've collected. Those conclusions include state policy choices and priorities over the last decade have resulted in lower student achievement in reading and math, wider achievement gaps for our Black, Hispanic, and low-income students, reduced transparency around outcomes, and our startling downward trend lines. And I believe personally, most important, the conclusion was drawn that there is eroding parent confidence in Virginia's public schools. And as you've just heard tonight, you know the reason why. We, the parents, do not feel confident that our kids are being taught. Instead, we have leaders that have changed definitions, they've lowered expectations, and they've reduced the importance of proficiency in determining school quality and accreditation, and they often did this in the name of equity. Now, we just had our school board back in March tell us all that equity was, I quote, the most important thing in schools. Not education, not addressing learning loss, but equity. You know, President Bush used to say it's the soft bigotry of low expectations. And that's exactly why I believe we are seeing such a startling downward trends in our student achievements. And when you tell students that through this messaging that you don't believe that they can achieve at a higher rate, they don't. And that's the problem. Instead of lifting all the students up, you're tearing down the very best to the very bottom, all in the name of equity. Abraham Lincoln said, you can't make a weak man strong by making a strong man weak. So we don't strengthen the weak by weakening the strong. Our children, our future generation of leaders, the ones that will be your doctors, your lawyers, your teachers, your babysitters, your medical care professionals, our children, they deserve access to opportunity and excellence in education. So we, the voters, we, the parents, we, your bosses, are here tonight to ask for vouchers that are locally funded.
Thank you, ma'am.
To be put to a vote immediately. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to come forward? In a second.
Good evening, Chair Blevins, Vice Chair Biggs, and the rest of the board. My name is Sue Cass, and I am a resident of Blacksburg, as well as the chairman of the Montgomery County School Board. I did not plan on coming up to speak tonight, but after listening to the presentations, which I didn't realize you were allowed to give presentations. If I'd known, I would have brought my computer and put together a PowerPoint and supplied some for you also. So I'm really speaking off the top of my head right here. And I've taken some notes as I've gone along, and I'm really struggling with the misinformation that you've been provided by the speakers. Things like 5% more salary increases on top of the 5% increase that has already been agreed upon by the governor of our state. The MCEA is not asking for additional increases. What they're asking for is that the 5% that was promised be provided to the teachers. So that was inaccurate. Inaccurate that the MCEA always supports candidates. That's been done for years. That has nothing to do with political. It has to do with people they feel would be the best choice for a supervisor's role or a school board. As a matter of fact, they didn't even support me. And I was a former teacher. I did not get their support because they felt that the other person running along with me was as qualified as I was. So they didn't even choose a candidate. So that was misinformation. That we're not trying to get back to learning is absolutely untrue. And I guess I would like to understand what details and facts are supporting comments like student indoctrination, bullying by the school board, that trying to power, absolute power, and it corrupts, and that children's innocence is being stolen. Indoctrination, it's bad. It's really bad. How do you define that? How have you identified that that is happening in our schools and that it's bad? That's not fact. That is an opinion. And it's opinion of a small group of people who come to our school board meetings, which, to be honest, this isn't really a board of supervisor issue. This is a school board issue, and they should be speaking to the school board if they're unhappy with the school board, which they do on a regular basis. How much time do I have left? I'm sorry, what was that, Craig?
Minute 23 seconds.
All right. I'll just close. I hope that you realize that no one is trying to lower the expectations of our children. Nothing is more important to us but the students of our county. And every decision we make has to do with our students. No one is trying to indoctrinate. No one is trying to take away. We are trying to provide something to all of our children, a good education and a safe environment. And I can't help but be insulted by the many statements that have been made here this evening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sir, if you'd like to come forward.
My name is Wayne Coleman, and I live at 1741 Stratford View Drive in Blacksburg, Virginia. And every time I hear a conversation like this, several different people presenting different issues, I was really moved by the father that spoke. I can't imagine having a conversation like that with my daughter at the dinner table. And so that was shocking to me. And then I'm imagining you guys who are wanting to do the right thing. You're moral people and intelligent people and have served consistently and served well. And I'm putting myself in your shoes and thinking, wow, how would I handle that kind of situation? And it is one step removed. It's presented to the Board of Supervisors rather than to the school board. I don't know. And so I'm moved again to pray for you, if that's okay. I don't want to be a burden to you by praying, but maybe it won't help you at all, but I'll tell you what, it'll help me to be at peace, just to pray that God will give you the wisdom and insight. So I pray that right now for each and every one of you, that the Lord will touch you deep in your soul, in your mind, in your spirit. Give you, first of all, peace, the peace that surpasses understanding. That you will have peace to be able to think clearly and not necessarily to sit down and try to figure out what the solution is, but the kind of peace and the kind of revelation that when you're least thinking about it, maybe in the morning you're taking a shower, getting ready for your day, and wow, something strikes you that you weren't even thinking about. A word, a revelation, some kind of direction, some kind of leading that you can grab hold of and move forward with it and hold on to it, and maybe that will be part of the solution. As I said before, I don't know what the solution is, but I pray this for you, that you'll have those kinds of revelations, that kind of peace, that you'll not be discouraged by seeing something insurmountable in front of you, but you will go forward like David did as a boy with a sling and a rock. And I pray that God will give you the ability to see what the giant is, not kill the wrong giant, see what the giant is, and sling that sling and fling that rock and hit the target and watch that giant topple. I appreciate each and every one of you. I really do. And we pray for you guys every day. So God bless you.
Thank you, sir. Would anybody else like to come forward? Seeing no one come forward, we will close the public address. Do we have an addendum?
We have no addendum this evening, Madam Chair.
Okay. Next is to move into work session. Do I have a motion?
Second.
A motion and a second. And we will go in, and I think first up is our Montgomery County Public School. Oh, I'm sorry. No discussion. And then, Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll.
Patricia Kowski?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Chair Blevins?
Aye.
6 ayes.
Now we'll have the presentation.
Madam Chair and board members, I believe Interim Superintendent Whitaker is here this evening to give the board an update on I see lots of people coming forward, to give the board an update on the MCPS fiscal 2023 budget.
It's me again. Chair Blevins, Vice Chair Biggs, rest of the board. We appreciate the opportunity to present to you an update to our budget. We understand the board has had some questions regarding Dr. Whitaker's recent presentation at our last board meeting. Dr. Whitaker has been working closely with the finance team, and the board is thankful for her due diligence in making sure the information provided to us is accurate and relevant. I'd like to ensure the board that a major focus for Dr. Whitaker right now is to identify a director of facilities to ensure that our current projects get the attention they need, as well as an assistant superintendent to oversee our finance and operations area. We're encouraged by the quality of the applicants we are seeing for our director of facilities and hope to identify a candidate quickly. So I think that'll be really helpful to everyone. And I know that for Dr. Whitaker, she is trying to wear 3 hats right now or more. And there's only so many you can put on your head. So I am going to let her take over from here and present the numbers to you.
Thank you, Chair Cass.
Thank you so much. All right.
I'm short, so I'm going to move this a little closer to myself. And it's weird sitting on this side. I am not used to that. All right. Good evening, Chair Blevins, Vice Chair Biggs, board members, and Mr. Meadows. Thank you so much for inviting Ms. Miano and myself here this evening to share our budget presentation with you. Tonight, we're going to start by describing the budget process for you that we are in, the new funding that has been available to us, and then finally, you'll see at the end an overview of that within a budget framework. And I'm going to have to turn because I got to be able to read. All right, there we go. As you all know, recently the General Assembly passed a budget for us, and that's reflected in what we're going to be sharing with you today. We did receive 2.1 additional dollars in counting funding, which we thank you for. And then in addition, $920,000 for the one-time purchase of 8 buses. From the state side, we've recently learned and are excited that we've received an additional $5.4 million. We'll describe it in a little bit more detail in just a minute for you, but of that $975,000 is earmarked for a $1,000 employee bonus. And then we are provided $3.15 in funds for school construction and $1.7 in additional compensation funds. So to discuss those employee compensation and bonuses just a little bit more for you. So the state revenue increased by 1.79, and this is to provide a 5% increase for our SOQ funded positions. So as you may know, those SOQ, standards of quality funded positions, are identified through the state standards of accreditation. And so what that means is certain positions, or sometimes certain portions of a position, we get funding for within the school division, and then other positions are not funded. Within those SOQ funded positions, the composite index plays a factor. So the state provides us their component, which is approximately 58% of that SOQ funded position, and the 42% remaining comes from those local funds. So an example of that, sometimes people go, well, what does that mean? So for example, in our career and technical education programs across the entire division, so those are any of our programs where we're graduating completers, we are funded by the state for SOQ only for 13.5 teachers across the entire division. So if we were only to staff those 13.5 positions, it would dramatically decrease the programs that we could offer and the opportunities that we prepare for our students for career readiness. So we fund additional positions because we want to offer additional opportunities to our students. But when we get raises like this, it's only for those 13.5% of the 13.5 positions that we have, and then for the SOQ portion of that. And so some of those positions, you know, you can't necessarily say two people are standing beside each other. One teacher gets the raise and the other teacher doesn't. They give us an amount for those positions, and so then we make the decision whether or not we give the raise to everybody or if we were to select individuals. I have never heard of a school division selecting certain positions while another position of that same role did not get the funds. And I just think it's important to make our public aware of that because they don't always understand. Sometimes they think we get the full amount from the state, and it's only for certain positions. And so within that, there's a 5% raise for those positions, and then a minimum of 2.5% is required to get any state funding. In addition, there's a one-time bonus of $975,000, again, for SOQ positions. We do not have all of the parameters revolving around that yet, but based upon what we are currently aware of, again, it is for those SOQ-funded positions. The goal is to promote retention in school divisions. They have encouraged us, while there is no, I'm so sorry, I'm a teacher, I project my voice. While there is no required local match, we are encouraged to provide a bonus for non-SOQ funded positions, and the language stated that we are recommended to find other funds. And so we are looking at using ESSER II funds for that. Katie's going to share a little bit with you about our benefits. We're kind of going to go back and forth and play tag in our presentation to you. She's sharing it today. It hasn't necessarily been a component of our ongoing budget presentations, but I asked that she begin to do that because I think it's important. It's a big part of our benefits package, and I think it's important for our board and our public to be aware of the increases or changes to that program.
Good evening, Chair Blevins, board members, Mr. Meadows. So as Dr. Whitaker indicated, our two biggest benefit expenditures are for VRS retirement and for insurance. And the General Assembly approved maintaining the current VRS contribution rate of 16.62%. So the spreadsheet's really small, but it just is a summary of our self-insurance fund that we've had since we've established it in 2014, October 2014. This chart shows the ending fund balance from each fiscal year since inception. You'll notice that at the end of the fiscal year 1920, the fund balance was at its highest, and that was during the time when we shut down for COVID in March of 2020. Also in 2020, with the shutdown of everything, all elective surgeries, or many elective surgeries were postponed, and many people did not or would not go to the doctor. So once hospitals and doctors' offices opened back up, our claims increased, which decreased our fund balance. And this is due in part to the increased severity of the treatment that these people needed from postponing their doctor's visits. So our insurance consultants have recommended we maintain 3 months reserve for our self-insurance fund. And as indicated by the blue star, we currently have about 2 months. This is the information that was presented to our school board at their meeting last week. So the school construction funds approved by the General Assembly are currently $3.15 million, 3.16. And then previously the $1.3 million was presented to the school board for Chromebooks. The remaining balance of a little over $1.8 million is for non-recurring eligible expenditures that meet the criteria, which are noted on this slide, but they're things such as school construction, additions, infrastructure, technology, school safety equipment and renovations. The General Assembly added clarifying language indicating that parking lot repair or replacement and facilities predominantly used for extracurricular activities would they're not eligible for these funds.
I think it's important to note here, I know we see Chromebooks and we may ask, that doesn't sound like school construction. So what I want to first make sure the board is aware of is that we are working to identify other funds to purchase Chromebooks with. In the long plan, we really need to determine a plan for sustainability for Chromebooks. They are no longer just one-time purchases. They're an integral component of the instructional program. They provide our students access. In addition, if we have inclement weather days, our students are able to access their curriculum and materials. And so while we have this in the budget at this time, my goal, at least while I'm in this role, is to identify another source of funding to purchase those Chromebooks with. As you can see here, we've already applied for $750,000 in grant funding. And Katie and I are working at this time, or I'm sorry, Ms. Miano and I are working at this time to identify another source. My ultimate goal would be to be able to put all of this money back into school construction needs. As I'm serving at this time, as Chair Cass stated, in multiple roles, it's giving me the opportunity to have a larger view, and our school construction needs are great. I would personally really love to put all of that funding back into that line, but I did want to make you aware of that. And also, of the board's discussion, we talked at the meeting of needing really to have a long-term plan for the sustainability of one-to-one technology for our students. So at this time, we talked about those Chromebooks. Some other projects that we were looking at, first is the Eastern Montgomery High School auditorium lighting system, approximately $19,000. Within that school, what's happening right now is they're having to turn off half the lights to use that facility because they're not able to fully utilize the space available to them, and that's impacting students in choir and band, and it's really putting an impact on the school's ability to showcase and have students, really shine. And so we have approved to move forward to make those corrections. In addition, at Montgomery Central, We've been doing renovations there on our op center and our parking lot, and our students who are attending Montgomery Central on a daily basis do not have anywhere to get energy out. As you may know, these are a lot of our students with high needs, and it's important for them to have a space to be physical. At this time, they take PE on a computer in virtual Virginia, and it's just really not appropriate. We need some other space for our students to go outside, and so we need to add that basketball court. You may say, but I heard you couldn't use those funds for athletics. There are no after-school athletics at Montgomery Central. They don't participate in teams. This is for during the day and for students to use during their normal school hours. And then what we would do would be to identify other projects. As you know, we've been working towards having a master facilities plan. We do need to continue to work on the draft that was brought forward to our board, but what we need to do is an analysis of looking at all the projects that we have on the table. The board would then make a decision about what is most timely and needed, and then we would make the decisions on how we would use those funds moving forward. It's important, another thing to note, we have heard recently about the concerns with the track at Eastmont High School. I had originally planned to bring that to the board as a recommendation, but as tends to happen, we were having our board meeting on Tuesday, and we got some information very late Monday night at 5:45 from the state, which kind of changed the gist of our presentation. And so we found out we could not use those funds for that purpose due to the extracurricular nature of the athletic events that occur after school. However, we will continue to gauge that project and rank it within, determining what we would use those funds for.
So here's the budget presentation by category. So if you'll notice that the first line, 2022, is what our appropriation was from last year. So within the budget that was allocated to us from the Board of Supervisors and what was originally approved by the governor, which our base budget is built on, we have the 5% raise. It's actually a portion of the 5% raise. We have the salary enhancements to sustain the $15 an hour we provided mid-year last year for the instructional aides. And then we were able to crunch some more numbers and find some lapse turnover and saving that we could put back into the budget to help cover a portion of the raise. So that brings us to the $126,788,704 that you had approved previously. Since then, as you know, we're here to talk to you about the additional funding from the state, roughly $5.5 million. Here's how we have broken it out in these technical adjustments. So as Dr. Whitaker indicated, the school Chromebooks would be an instructional piece. We're looking for other funding sources to possibly move that to operations and maintenance, but at this time, it would be an instructional expenditure for the Chromebooks. It may be at a later time we bring back an amendment to change that. The salary enhancements that we provided last year of 5%, the salary enhancements from the prior year of the $1.6 million is being added back in from the supplemental appropriation you provided us from the General Assembly budget approved last year. Then the remainder of the 5% salary enhancement. And then we're going to begin to move some of the CARES, the CRSSA positions into our operating budget. And that would be the start for $250,000, which is roughly 2 positions. The increase in fuel costs, we don't know what's going to happen with those. We know that at the end of this year, we're going to break even from our budget to our fuels. So we know that we will likely spend more in our fuel next year, so we're going to increase that by $200,000. The light blue line indicates the increase from each of those categories to come back to our final budget of $132,255,326. And then just a recap of what our total funding by source would be. And then the additional state revenue, that's just what we balance to. It does balance, but I just left that highlighted for you guys and our board. The school nutrition budget was originally presented as $4.6 million. Since that presentation, we've had discussions with our third party, the nutrition group, on what the budget would look like and what we need to project for the next year, and it's increased to roughly $5.2 million. We have included included $100,000 for some equipment purchases, including a dishwasher for Falling Branch Elementary, where they were hand washing all of their dishes. And then also our point of sale systems at each of the schools is very outdated, and so this will allow us to update those systems in all schools. And building that budget, we used new increased rates for for full-priced elementary and secondary meals. This is partly determined by the USDA and their formula based on how much we receive from them for a reimbursable meal, and they dictate how much we have to charge. That would be 10 cents. We decided to go ahead and increase that another 5 cents for a total of 15 cents for those full-priced elementary and secondary meals, and 25 cents for the full-priced adult meal.
And as this was our presentation to our school board, we shared with them our next steps. Many people know, but some don't. Teachers and some other employees within school divisions are required to have an annual contract or a contract for employment, and those have certain dates and timelines that run with them. And so it's very important for the school board to let employees know by a certain time, which is June 15th, whether or not they're going to be employed for the following school year. And so what we needed to do was go ahead and issue employee contracts. As you know, even though we have a budget from the General Assembly, we have not yet gotten approval from the governor. And so until the governor passes a budget, we cannot provide increased salaries to our employees until we know exactly what those numbers are. So we did go ahead last week and begin the issuance of those contracts. What that does is allow our employees to know they still have a position with us, but it was based on the current year, salary. And then we will reissue those once we get an approved budget from the governor with the increased amount. So for this time, they know that they'll be employed with us, but it's based upon this year's numbers as opposed to any increase. And then we would reissue those once we got a final budget. We will, of course, as I said, and it's not on here, but continue to determine what our needs are, to work to try to find other funding for those Chromebooks, and to prioritize the facilities projects that we need to focus on for this year. We're happy to answer questions that you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Whitaker. We'll go around the room. I'll start off with Supervisor Vijikowski after he takes a drink.
No, I'll pass.
Katie?
I'll pass on the drink. I just need a little bit of clarification. I think I might have misunderstood what you said.
Sure.
When you talked about the 13 and a half teachers that will get the SOQ money, that was just for those trade classes?
Yeah, I was just trying to provide an example. So we would get, I'm not saying we would only give it to them. I'm saying the funding we would get would only be for 13.5 teachers. We have far more than that, so we would find the additional locally.
How many SOQ positions do you have?
In total,
Yeah.
Ms. Miana? I don't know that off the top of my head, but we'd be able to get that number for you.
More than half?
Of all positions, no, I don't think so. Because we have a lot of substitute teachers, all of those other positions. In terms of full-time staff, I'd hate to guess, but I would think so.
60.
Yeah?
50 to 60.
Yeah. She's saying roughly 50 to 60%, but we could get that exact number for you.
And has Montgomery County Public Schools always been self-insured?
So we are in a collaboration with the county, so our employees, we get to pool together for the benefit of that self-insurance. I've been here 6 years. I know we've been in it that long. Kitty, do you know how much longer?
In October of 2014 is when we became self-insured, and that's when we went into the agreement with the county.
I did not realize that. I thought you all had a different program, but.
We pool our experiences because we have a very big pool. And so then we're able to work together, the county and the schools, to get the benefit of all employee groups together.
Eastern Montgomery High School is over 20 years old. Have these lights in the auditorium been the same way the whole time?
I do not know the answer to that. I can only tell you I became aware of it about 10 days ago. And so when that came to my attention, it was right about the same time I became aware of the track. I could find the history on that for you, but I do believe it's been a problem for several years.
Yeah, I think when it comes to paving, there's a lot of areas there in that school that probably need it. But and how often do you replace the Chromebooks?
So what we do is we cycle them through. Right now we have a kindergarten, we do a replacement every 4 or 5 years. So a student is assigned a Chromebook, and then they carry that for multiple years. And then typically when they enter the next grade or school. So I think it's kindergarten, 5th grade, and 9th grade is where we typically do those Chromebooks, and then they carry them with them for the remainder of that time.
So if you had greater needs than the Chromebooks, would they last another year?
With the Chromebooks?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that what we can do, and again, what I'm trying to do is work to identify some areas. Initially, when Mr. Krantz had presented the budget, he had included all of those funds. So for 3 years of purchases, we went ahead and scaled those back already to 1. But what we're trying to do is work to determine what are the absolute needs at this time, and then where are other funding sources that we could get that from, because I do feel our school projects need a lot of attention.
That's all I got for right now.
Thank you, Supervisor King.
Thank y'all for coming.
Absolutely.
Just have a couple of questions. Looking back at our budget, that $1.6 million that wasn't included in the original fiscal year 23 budget, but it was appropriated for fiscal year 22 budget for ongoing.
Yes, Katie is the best to explain this.
Yes, Mr. King, if you'll remember, last year, we had to come back to you and request the 1.6 as an additional appropriation because the General Assembly, there was some timing issues with when you all had approved your budget and when we had notified the county finance that we had received the additional $1.6 million. We had included that in our estimate for giving raises last year. So now we're bringing it back because it is included in what the state is giving us and what was in our base budget, and we're just having to include that this year. Does that help?
So you're including it now?
Yes, I have included it in the presentation that you just saw. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And on that $3.1 million, the Chromebooks and all this, did I misunderstand what you said? If we can find money somewhere else, we'll put this in operation?
Yeah. Yes. So because you appropriate our budget based on categories, the presentation we gave to our school board indicated that we were going to spend that on Chromebooks, which is an instructional expense. If, however, as Dr. Whitaker indicated, we can come up with a different funding source for that, or we can adjust that number, we would want to spend that in operations and maintenance, which is where we spend some of our school construction funds.
Here, let me pull that slide in there. There you go.
But this $3.1 million is not an ongoing money. So why would you even think about putting it in operation?
So what you would see next year, if they don't provide any school construction funds next year, what you would see is if this is exactly how it stays, what you would see next year is a decrease in the lines for instruction and operation maintenance on the exact same amounts because the revenue would have decreased. So we would just remove it from our operating budget next year for that $3.1 million.
Just my opinion. If you're not going to do the Chromebooks, I would like to see you help the citizens out and put some back on the Christiansburg High School where we borrowed all this money for them. I mean, my understanding is the governor says it's for construction.
It is for construction, and so we would work with our board to determine how it is they want us to allocate those funds. I'll share your recommendation with them.
And one more thing, and I know you heard me say this for years. $1.7 million back in 2022, when we put everybody's raises on layaway, we give half of it, and then we come back and give the other half in February. The employees of the school didn't get that. At one of our meetings, Mr. Krantz said they spent it somewhere else. Where did it go?
So I do hear your question, and I do not have an answer for you on that today, but what I can tell you is that I will continue to look into that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Supervisor DeMotts.
Thank you both for being here tonight and for sharing this update with us. I know the delay in getting a budget has been stressful, in addition to everything else that you guys have been doing. So thank you very much for your work. I do have a question specifically about the 2 CARES-funded positions that you plan on moving over into your regular operating budget. You said it was 2 positions, $250,000. What are those positions? They seem pretty highly paid, so it doesn't seem like a teacher position.
So I think Katie was actually misspeaking there. We are working to determine which positions in CARES, there were certain positions that we put forward to hire and did hire, and there were some positions that we put forward and were not able to staff. And so what our board will do is work to determine that, but at this time, we're going to, putting that in as a placeholder because there were a lot of positions that we hired with that, and we'll be able to provide more information on that at a later time.
Okay, thank you. That was all I had.
Supervisor Bone.
I'd like to follow up on Supervisor DeMott's question about those quote-unquote 2 positions that aren't really 2 positions, but you're on tape. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So
I got ahead of myself, I'm sorry.
No trouble.
Okay, Katie.
But several years ago, when I first got on the board, a rough number for a starting teacher, was about $70,000. Now, that's not all salary, it's including benefits and all that kind of stuff. What is it, 80,000 now?
So we still use 70 as our placeholder. That allows us to do a base salary and then the 26% benefit package. Of course, when that's where that lapse in savings comes in, and but that is the placeholder that we use at this time.
So if they were teachers, starting out, it'd be 3 and a little bit, right? Sure. Okay. So I was confused with the health reserves. You now only have 2 months reserve, probably more than 2 months, but not 3 months, right? That's what you're clearly saying. Are you increasing premiums? Or, what are you planning on doing? Because that graph looked horrible.
Yeah, that slide was presented for our board for their future discussions. So we did not increase premiums for the 22-23 fiscal year. So we're continuing to monitor that. I monitor it basically on a weekly, definitely monthly basis, and I've already let our board know that we would keep them up to date on how that's going to look.
And what happens when it gets too low? I don't even know what too low means, but is there some alarm that goes off? Is there something that kicks in, or let's say whatever kicks in mid-year? What would that look like? I don't even know what that looks like.
So I don't know that we have gotten to that place either. It was important to me that Katie begin to bring this in. I'm so sorry, I'm trying to look at her own. It was important to me that Katie bring this information to our board, as I had not seen it before them, and I wanted them to be aware of the balance of those funds so that we can continue to look at that and address it. Each month, there's a deposit that's put into our accounts. So, when we have our claims, they come out, and then each month we put a new balance in. And so some months the claims are higher than other months. And so that balance, as you can see, would fluctuate month to month. It is something that we need to continue to be aware of. And so that's why, because of those declining numbers, it was important for us to get that out in front of our board at this time. We did have a $100 increase to our deductible, which we did not at this time pick up as the school division. Typically in the past, any deductible increase, we would provide that additional funding, and we did not do that this time on our HSA accounts for our employees.
My last question is, this is the first time I've ever heard of a point of sale system.
Sure.
What is that for?
So this is interesting. Let's take you all the way back to like Windows XP. That's how old this program is. So essentially, think of when you go to any food service place and the kids key in their number, it's that point of sale system. And so that's where the students' accounts are logged. They were very, very, very old and out of date. And so our staff needed updated technology to use. It was surprisingly cheaper than what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was like 60, I was going to say 56, so we were close, 65,000 for all 20 schools. Or 19, I'm sorry.
I also
MC doesn't have one.
I also want to thank you for everything you're doing. I can't imagine what it's like to come in as an interim, superintendent and discover things that maybe you hadn't seen before. But I think the transparency that you are showing us and the integrity that you're showing us is very valuable, and we wish you the best and hope that even though your school board chair made the comments that she did about the public address, that whatever true concerns are identified, are addressed, and I think the public needs to know what those things are, because we are only told what we're told, and we take it very seriously to make sure that what we can affect, we try to, but so much of what some of those comments have very little, we have very little effect. So I think that it'd be great to share your path with us so that we continue to convey the confidence that we've had in you all along, but this is a different day. So we'd like to, I'm speaking for myself, I would love to hear your path a little bit along the way. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Vice Chair Biggs.
Well, what I would like to, first, a lot of my questions have been asked, but I do have one that I wanted to ask so it can be in public that I keep asking every time, and that is, teachers, employees of Montgomery County School System are each going to get a 5% raise, not an average of 5% over the system, correct?
I'm so glad you asked that. The answer is yes. When looking to make a recommendation to the board, I know in the past several years, we have done our salary scales in a little different way, and that's important sometimes to adjust them within steps, because what happens is 5% means a lot more at one end of the scale than it does at the other. And so if you always just give that straight raise, then what you do is you spread the scale and you spread steps out in between. But the recommendation that I made to the board this year, I felt was very important that all of our employees get a 5% pay raise. Everybody is doing their part, and we could not be where we were without the service providers who meet our students at the bus each day, who feed them lunch, who help them in between classes. And so it was important to us that we be able to recognize each of our employees that way.
And I would agree with you, because in the past, this has come back to haunt our board, when it hasn't gone that way. Sure. What I'd like to say is, I, as a former teacher and someone that's been involved looking at the school system since 1978, I'm proud of it. What I see is just a tremendous challenge, Annie and Katie,
that you have before you, and also the school board does. And I'm so glad that Chair Cass and Vice Chair Franklin are here tonight. When there's a change in leadership like this, and you haven't been on the playing field with all of the plays, it's really difficult to try to put everything together, and you all have done a great job of bringing to us information and being transparent. And I feel sort of a very positive feeling about this continuing. And I like the fact that when a question was asked and you didn't know it, you're going to go back and you're going to get that information and bring it forward. And that's all part of the transparency and the trust. And I've really felt for you all. And the other thing that made everything so complicated, of course, was the budget process at the state when we elect our leaders to go, and that is their main job, and it's not done. And now it's still not done because the governor has to sign it. And so the effect on morale and the people that need their contracts, I can't even imagine. And I know that you guys have tried to hold all this together, and I just wanted to say that I am very appreciative of everything that you've tried to do and will continue to do. And thank you for being here tonight. Absolutely, I appreciate that. My role is to bring you correct information and to provide you with what you need. While I'm in this interim capacity, I went and stood and I swore an oath to do certain things, and that is what my job is to answer your questions, to bring you the information that you need, and to make sure that our public is informed and that we're making the best decisions that we can. I appreciate those comments, and I welcome people to ask questions. There's a lot that people want to know, and I'm an individual who believes that we should provide those answers to them. So I appreciate that very much, and I'll continue to do the best. We have an amazing team of fabulous people. The strength of Montgomery County across the whole is the individuals who make us up. And so I feel really fortunate to work with the colleagues that I have at Montgomery County.
Very good. Well, thank you again. I think this is the first time, Dr. Whitaker and Ms. Mayano, that you've actually presented to the board, and as the supervisors have already said, for the challenge. So we do appreciate, you're serving as interim after the termination of Dr. Meyer, after the resignation of Assistant Superintendent Tommy Krantz. So I know you're looking to fill those positions, and also looking for a facilities director that we hopefully will get filled quickly because we have that Christiansburg High School project that we're on a time crunch for. So I do appreciate you both coming, and I'm glad that you're willing to, that openness to answer questions for us, and that if you don't know it, you'll get back with us on that. I do have some questions on the budget and or some clarifications for us. So going back to, and it's at the same screen you guys have. Okay, same thing here. Okay. For instructions of the FY 21-22 operating budget, you have here $93,590,248. However, in February 28th, when we were presented for the budget for this coming up year, I'm showing a total of $92,043,630, and I'm guessing that's the $1.67 million that you're talking about. But that was already. Clarify for me, you're saying that it was part of the base and needs to be reallocated and added to this budget?
Yeah, so I know the numbers you're talking about. I don't remember exactly how they were. I don't know how they were arrived at. So last year, when you all approved our budget, it came back at the 122. Subsequent to that approval, the General Assembly approved us getting the additional $1.6 million. When our school board approved their budget, they knew that the $1.6 million was coming in and that we could give the raises that we were going to give. So we did provide those last year. Now that we're coming back, it's not included in that base budget year, but we've received the revenue and we continue to receive that in the operating budget from the state. So we're including that here to show where we had the $1.6 million. It needs to be in the 122. It just didn't get in there except for a supplemental appropriation.
Okay, and you might not be able to answer this, but since it was approved, I know, and that was after last year's budget, but in February 28th, when Dr. Meyer and Mr. Krantz were here, they would have known that, and that should have been added in on our presentation.
I'm very sorry. I cannot speak to their actions. All I can do right now is really address the information that we've been provided and try to move forward. Neither Ms. Miano nor myself were involved in the development of that presentation. And so I'm sorry, but I can't speak to them.
Okay, and that's fine. Just making sure a clarification because we're showing a different figure and then the 93 million. So I just had a concern with that clarification. So it's now, that was last approved by the state and now is a base part of the base budget.
So I think I'm going to make it even more complicated for you because essentially right now our base budget is the 126. We're asking you all to give us an additional appropriation of the 5.4. So you're going to see these same 5 lines again next year to add into our base budget.
Okay.
Because again, you've already approved what we're going to get, but we know we're getting the additional revenue. Let me rephrase that. The General Assembly has approved to give us the additional revenue, and we believe and hope that is what we will get. So we are going to provide that with the 5% raise and the additional items that we listed.
Okay.
Does that make?
Yes, I just want to make sure we're clear in all the numbers, that we're making sure everything lines up correctly. So at least for my clarification to make sure, because when I was looking at that, I said, wait a minute, that's not what we were given. And so I wanted to make sure we're that 1.6 million. So they did have it, but it just wasn't on our presentation from the last year, from February 28th of this year, from the difference. So that's about the difference. That's the amount there.
Yeah. Again, I don't want to answer a question that I cannot give you 100% to, but what I can tell you is what you're saying makes a lot of sense. I'm continuing to look into that, but I just don't want to, say something that I can't give you 100% on.
Sure, yes, ma'am. And then looking here for and again, I know it was the last minute for the budget to finally be approved by the General Assembly, and we know the governor hasn't signed it. Sure. And so hopefully they'll sign it here quickly so that this will all be correct information too, and understand adjustments if something happens if the governor doesn't sign. The increase of the $5.4 million plus $1 million from the state, that is 1.797 and some change here. That's going to go towards the 5% SOQ, correct? Just for clarification, making sure I'm correct.
Let me just make sure I'm on the same line as you. I'm sorry. Tell me, say that again.
From the 5.4 million, 1.797 and some change here is going to be for that 5% salary increase, correct? Yeah.
Maybe if I let you finish your entire question, and then I might be able to answer.
Okay, and then that leaves the remaining for the construction, correct? And then, so what I have a question about is that if this is construction and we've got the Christiansburg project, and we know already from prior presentations that we have lots of needs at the Blacksburg Elementary Strand schools, construction, I'm a little confused on why we're putting in that operation, which would be a recurring base budget, basically, and not going towards capital.
Again, it would go towards capital. So the presentation that I provided to Dr. Whitaker and to the school board is how I would provide the budget based on the revenue that we were receiving from the state. In that, it says that it's a state construction grant program. And based on the fact that it is a grant is how we decided to put it into the operating budget like we would any other state grant. We would spend those construction we would spend those construction dollars. It sounds weird to say construction when we're talking about $3.2 million. I get that it can go towards another project, but it's not enough for a huge construction project. So as Dr. Whitaker indicated, we would bring forward some projects for the board to consider on what we could use those funds for. In addition, I'll also say that we're waiting on additional guidance, hopefully from the General Assembly and or the governor on how those dollars can be spent.
So yes, that's where and again, I understand grant can be one-time money or that you have to reapply. So that's why I don't like it in the operation, because that means that it would be reoccurring or a base budget. And that's why I want to just make sure it's capital with all the construction needs, especially since early this year we heard of the needs for some of the elementary schools in Blacksburg. So I want to make sure those, if they're allocated or designed for construction, that we are using those to, and I know that $3 million, although it's a lot, might not, but it could be, make sure it's using for construction.
Sure. Our board will certainly utilize those funds within the way they're specified by the rules that we've been given. Again, they didn't give us a whole lot. We've got it here, but we think we'll get more from them. But we would certainly spend it within those allowable expenses.
Very good. The $975,000 is for the state coming in for a $1,000 bonus for retention.
Correct.
But that's only for
SOQ funded, yes.
And then they are encouraging you, I think you said, and I think it was on one of these.
Yeah, it's actually this one. That's perfect.
Okay. And that recommend using URSA funding for other positions?
Or ESSER funding.
ESSER, I'm sorry,
It's
ESSER, okay.
They indicated that school divisions are encouraged to use other funds to provide the pandemic bonus. And what my recommendation to the board was that we utilize ESSER funds to provide that bonus to the non-SOQ positions.
And how much do you all have in that funding?
So we have 3 different streams within that funding. I don't have the exact numbers for you right now because they're each spend downs. As you remember, we have about $10 million that goes into the CHS project there for HVAC. Then we're running all of our summer programs, our summer academies that are working to address learning loss. We have, I think in elementary, close to 800 students in our summer program this summer. We have our middle school robust program, so all of those things are being used for that funding as well. I don't have the numbers for you right this minute, but we could get those to you.
And I know we already talked about that $10 million going towards Christiansburg High School.
Yes.
And are we still on a good time? Because I know that there's a timeline that it has to be spent, and we're going to meet those.
So we are doing great on, I'm really excited to talk about that. I have never spent so much time in construction as I have in the last 3 weeks, but many hours with the teams. But yes, we feel good about that. I have gotten approval from the state that all of those funds have been allocated to us. I also have approval in writing that it is only the HVAC component of that project that has to be finished, which was really great news for us because, as you know, sometimes getting materials and supplies right now is difficult. So we were concerned about the timeliness of that, but we do have verification that as long as we have that component of the project done, that we will be able to utilize that funding.
Okay. And then on those URSA, did I say it right?
ESSER.
ESSER funding, CARES, and we're just talking about the $250,000, and you might not be for 2 positions, it might.
Yeah.
Is that $250,000 that you're going to try to incorporate each year as an operating fund?
Yeah, so for this year only is what I'd like to speak to. But yes, that is to put those into our regular operating budget so that those positions would remain within the school division.
And is that, are you talking about, and this is just part of that, but from the CARES funding that you hired the 23.5 positions, which is temporary money, that's what you're trying to absorb that cost? Is that what you're trying to do?
So some of those, yes. So
Okay.
some of those positions are moved forward into this budget. And so that's the recommendation for this year.
Okay. And so because Mr. Krantz had said for those 23.5 that this CARES money was going to fund, and of course that ends in a
It
short
does.
distance. He also told us that, or an email, that to continue those costs to fund that, it would be about $1.6 million.
So do you mean to bring in multiple positions?
Those 23.5 to continue to fund them after the grant money, CARES money was done.
Quickly off the top of my head, I don't think that that amount would be enough to cover those positions when I'm doing just a rough estimate. But again, those, I believe that's what Mr. Krantz brought forward to you, but our board would have to make a decision each year as to which positions they wanted to fund and bring forward. So for this year, all I can speak to is the $250,000, and that long-term planning is something that the school division needs to look at.
Because, yes, I would be concerned with those folks that, and I think he said like 10 to 12 of them were administrative principal positions. So that's a lot of money. And to have a principal for just the funding time and then not be able to continue that. So I'd be, concerned of where those additional funding or sources for that funding would become when it's such a big hunk of money there for that. And when you say it's not 1.6 million, you think it would be more, higher?
I think if we're estimating a teacher's salary at $70,000, and we look at that, that's 23 positions, it's pretty close, but if you add administrative roles into that, it may balance out with higher and lower paying positions, but it's not something that I can tell you off the top of my head, that estimate. But again, the board would have to make a decision long-term about what they would like to do with that.
And you said our average teacher pays about $70,000. You're talking about for benefits and everything,
That's including benefits and everything, yes, ma'am.
And what is the average for a principal or assistant
Would you
principal?
estimate that 125, maybe?
125?
What do you use what is the budgeting you use for an administrative role? Okay. Yeah.
Okay, all right, okay.
Thank you.
All right, so that's why I was questioning when you originally said 2 positions for $250,000. I'm like, woo, what teacher's making $125,000?
Right.
So it would probably be, it might not be just 2, but, and so you're doing small amounts, trying to preserve, I guess, some of those positions.
For this year, yes.
For this year, okay, all right. And let's see. So I think, and then the biggest concern would be making sure that this money for construction stays in capital, not operating, because I don't want it to become, especially since we have those needs, Christiansburg High School and the Blacksburg Syrians Elementary Schools. And I know that we have already approved $90 million for the high school, and I think 85 with giving $5 million to help address some of those. So if you take that $3 million with that 5, that does give you a nice hunk, $8 million. And those would be used for school construction and not towards the operational center.
So in terms of those projects, the board has not determined that yet, but if I were to make a recommendation, I would be recommending projects for schools.
And does the state have the guidelines that they will be following for that?
All we have is what we provided you today, that just kind of provided that you may use it for this, and you may not use it for the extracurricular or parking lots. That's the guidance we've gotten at this time.
Okay. And just to follow up on Supervisor King's comment about years ago, that $1.7 million for teachers' raises, that Mr. Krantz said that time the administration used it for other needs. We would like to have an official, so there's so clarification, no miscommunication, misinformation. We want to know for sure where that money was used for the teachers. And the only other thing is that when we're talking about clear communications and obviously misinformation out there, I am concerned when and I know you're looking for the superintendent, and I encourage all citizens to make sure they attend one of these meetings and do the survey for the superintendent's job search. And I know that you guys are going to do the pay at $240,000 for that superintendent position. Is that correct?
I cannot speak to that. I'm not involved in that.
You're asking the wrong person.
All right, sorry. Chair Cass, thank you. But $240,000, is that correct?
That's what was agreed to at our last meeting. After speaking to our recruiters, that is approximately what we would have to pay in order to get the kind of candidate that we were looking for.
And former superintendent, Dr. Meyer, he was 217?
Yes, he had
Around that.
217, plus he had some other bonuses.
And so the reason to go up higher is just to...
Unfortunately, right now, the market is very, as the recruiters use the word, shallow. There is not a large pool, and the job market, as an HR person myself, and this is what I do every day, the job market is definitely somebody who's looking for a job. It's a candidate's market. It is not the organization's market. And so candidates are demanding higher salaries, and that's what the market's asking for. Superintendents are looking at the climate right now out there, and you know that you read the news. The superintendents are under a lot of pressure, and so it's definitely not only a shallow pool, but it's a difficult place to do recruiting. So that is why we agreed to go higher.
And as we're talking about, and I know, again, Ms. Cash, you've addressed the board during public address about our former superintendent, and still, as I understand, he has received a check for April and May, still from the county.
Mm-hmm.
Is that severance pay? Is that?
I cannot speak to the separation agreement that was approved.
Okay.
So that is confidential. It's an employee personnel issue, and so we cannot discuss that.
Okay, even though there's a code section that says school boards before they
I've been
give
advised by my
severance,
attorney that section does not apply to this.
it doesn't apply. And would we be able to know the exemptions for that?
I would have to ask the attorney.
Well, maybe that's something that, of course, this is a question of what.
I guess what I would say, as logical, reasonable people, clearly we made a decision to release Mr. Meyer, and we did it without cause. With cause would have involved a intense investigation that would have involved everyone in our county, all of our employees, and community members. It would have been a very expensive process, time-consuming, and while the whole process was going on, Dr. Meyer would still continue to get paid. So we had to make a decision as to what's the best thing to do. And we decided that this is what we did. And that's about the best I can tell you without providing any more information. I think that we, as I said at the last time I spoke here, we're being what we feel fiscally responsible. I know that people are guessing as to what was paid to Dr. Meyer, and there's all sorts of theories out there. And I would say I've pretty much yet to hear an accurate one. No one has really come forward with really what is accurate. And I guess that's a good thing, because that means we've done our job in keeping things confidential. But is he still paid, right? Was he paid for those few months? Yes, he was.
So just for clarification, to make sure I understand that, so he was terminated without cause, and currently is still receiving and is being paid. And
I guess I'm not sure how that quite works as far as how it's paid. So yes, as far as I understand, he basically is being paid.
And that for the Virginia Code section of 15.2.
Because I mean, you're looking at the financials that I could look at, right? So you see it on the financials. So what you see is what you see.
Right, yes, ma'am. And I just want it for our citizens, because I know it's very challenging. It's challenging for us as Board of Supervisors. You know, we're asked these questions about, is he going to be paid out? Is he going to continue to pay out? I mean, because that will be an expense when we're talking about money. And
Yeah, I agree with that. And there were, you know, we had to weigh the expenses of our community against decisions that were made. So it's not to say that if other decisions were made, there wouldn't have been even greater expenses. This has not been an easy process. I think that Interim Superintendent Whitaker has done an amazing job of identifying things that have gone on in the past and continues to do that. And, you know, a lot of us are dealing with things that we didn't know of, and we're trying to manage around that and trying to make decisions based upon that. But, you know, I'm not going to say trust me, because I know that probably 50% of the community doesn't, but we made what we think is the best decision for everyone. And as an HR person, I have often worked where where someone goes and they continue to receive a severance package. That's not an unknown process. So that is not something that we are just doing and no one else does. So
just wanted clear communication so our citizens know. And then you just said that, and of course, I know I don't need to get into HR things, but according to Code Section 15.2-1510.1, severance benefits provided to any departing official appointed by local governing bodies or the school board shall be publicly announced by the local governing body or school board, or respectively prior to such departure. Is there a reason that you said that there was an exemption, or that there?
I would have to consult my attorney on that as to what the specifications are.
Okay, all right.
I mean, I don't want to be providing information that's incorrect.
Very good. Thank you. I just wanted to
And
be
I
clear
understand the community
communication.
feels as though, I think that's where things get a little difficult. The community feels that they should know all the details. But if you work in an organization, no one tells you why somebody is let go. No one gives you information why someone is left. Dr. Meyer was an employee of ours, and we're respecting the confidentiality of our agreement. And that's our responsibility to do, not just to the board, but also to the individual.
Thank you, Ms. Cass. Thank you for answering that. Do I have any other follow-up questions? Comments? Supervisor Bone?
I think what we're supposed to do is just ask questions about this presentation. Is that what we were doing during this time?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I don't see anything about the superintendent's pay or anything like that. I'm wondering, is there another opportunity for us to have that kind of conversation and come prepared to talk about that instead of, you know, just seizing the opportunity?
Well, I believe we will have that joint meeting soon with the school board.
Thank you.
Any other follow-up? Okay. Thank you. Okay, we will take a 10-minute break.
2 hour.
No, 10 minutes. We'll come back in 10 minutes. Thank you.
She says no.
And classification study.
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members. Angie is here this evening. Also, Clay is here with us, and Brad was in here. There, you were back there. Now you're over there. This team has worked very hard over the last couple of months on pulling together the findings for our comp and class study, and I believe Angie's ready to share some good information this evening.
Thank you. I would also like to thank Mark Magruder, who is probably still watching, and finance and budget people who helped us put this together as well. We're presenting this to you later in the year than we typically do. That's worked out to our advantage because we've gotten all of the results from our surrounding localities pay studies, and we know that we're now going to be on track with them. Whereas sometimes if you get out in front of it, you end up falling behind. So that was a benefit for us. And just to give you an overview, I'm going to talk about the comp and class plan. The compensation and classification plan is a list of grades. Sometimes I might call them bands. I'm going to try to always call them grades so it won't be confusing. But jobs are assigned to these grades, and then there's a minimum, median, and maximum salary for each grade. So that's just a little bit of background for that. We hired the Berkeley Group as a consultant to help us, and they surveyed similar localities to us, which are listed here. We did include the PSA as part of this study so that they can use the information as well, and it was not an additional cost to have those 20 or so people included in our plan. We did not include their cost in this, of course. They'll bring that to you later. But that's why you might see the Regional Water Authority and the Riviera Service Authority in this. These are local competitors included as well, and localities that might not be very close to us, but they're similar to us in other ways. The survey components, as I said, it's the demographics of the localities we compare to, what their pay structure is, and that's that plan that I was talking about with grades. Recent pay increases they might have had, the number of employees that they have, and their pay ranges. We focused this on full-time employees, and the reason that we did that, we want to make sure that we are paying our full-time employees who use their salary for their living to survive, that they have enough money to make it in this day and time, because we know that's very important, and we had some low-paid positions that we specifically needed to look at. So the pay structure, when they looked at our pay structure, that's a benefit of having a consultant. They can compare us objectively to other jurisdictions. They found that it was comparable. However, a lot of jurisdictions were bringing their bottom grades up to be $15 as a minimum living wage. We did that as well in our study. The classifications, we have recommended adjusting the lower grades, as I said, for the minimum living wage, and reclassifying some specific jobs to align with the survey results. Deputies are going to get reclassified in this plan, as well as lower paying jobs. There are also various other jobs that were just on the wrong grade for different reasons. The job changed over time, and the job didn't get reclassified and that kind of thing. And the third component is internal equity. That's extremely important. That involves compression, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. One thing I wanted to point out, though, when we looked at this and we looked at how much it costs to reclass people versus the internal equity, which is spreading them out within the grade, the majority of the cost of this plan, which is about 90%, went to spreading out the cost. People were pretty much on the right grade, but when they needed to get spread out, that was the costly factor. Again, compression, we talk about that a lot. That's when employees' actual pay is clustered together regardless of their experience. So we've talked about that before. We've got people who've been here 5 years who are making the same as brand new employees, and that is not good for morale. So we wanted to address that. Our pay grades, we assume are based on a 30-year span. So the beginning of the pay range would be someone with no experience. At the end of the range, it would be someone with 30 years of experience. Our last pay study was done in 2018. And for those of you that remember that, we were only able to place individual employees at 65% of their years of service because of the funding constraints at that time, which that has held us back at this point as well. This is exciting and good news, I think. We were able, with our current study, to spread employees whose pay grade starts at $50,000 or below at 100% of where they should be on the grade. So that's really beneficial to those people in those $50,000 and below ranges. And then for employees on grades at $50,000 or above, will be spread at 70% of their time. As far as implementation of this goes, you most graciously approved a 5% increase for us on May the 1st, which is very appreciated by everyone. That helped us with this study because if you hadn't done that, this would have cost a whole lot more. So that was our foundation and our starting point. The second step in figuring out how this would work and how it would be costed is we reclassified positions. So we moved people to the appropriate grade. And then thirdly, we looked at how long they had been here and prorated their time and placed them in that grade according to their length of service to address our compression issues. Assuming that you approve our appropriation resolution, which includes this pay plan, these pay adjustments will be reflected in the July 15th paychecks for employees. And finally, this is what you've been waiting for, the cost of the plan. The cost of the plan is $267 million. You might recall from the budget that you approved this year for 23, we set aside $939,000 for the comp plan. That was before the minimum living wage became $15 an hour, and when that happened, things changed. It was an estimate at that time, but obviously that has changed. The second line, the $64,000, there was some savings in the 5% number that you set aside in the budget of $1.38 million, because when we projected that, some turnover occurred after that, so that 5% didn't cost quite as much as we thought it would. And then if you remember, on April 11th, Mark made a budget update presentation to you and talked about a little bit extra revenue that we had, about $379,000 or $380,000. That was set aside in special contingencies and wasn't allocated for any specific item. So the 263 comes out of that. And that's how the plan is funded. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer those, or I can get my counterparts to do that.
Okay, we'll go around the room and we'll start off with Supervisor Physicality.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you.
A headache. Supervisor King.
No questions right now, but you know I'll have some later.
Okay, let me know.
Supervisor DeMott.
I do have a question. On your third slide, I completely understand, and this actually might be a good question for Clay. I completely understand wanting to apply the salary or the study for just full-time. In our last meeting, I believe, in my board report, I talked about the effectiveness of updating the minimum living wage to $15 an hour in hiring specifically for Parks and Rec, which hires a lot of part-time employees. So what are we doing, I guess, to remain competitive in that marketplace as well? And I know there are probably other examples within the county where we have part-time employees that we're competing with other localities.
I think I can answer that for you, and if I can't, we'll call on Clay. Parks and Rec specifically, as I think you know, lifeguards are paid more, $15 and up. There are gate attendants and play camp workers who are not paid $15 an hour. We did look at that. There would be a cost increase associated with that that's fairly significant. Another big category of part-time workers that are not included in this is site attendants. They're usually retired folks who we don't have trouble recruiting for those positions, and they're about $11.50 to $12 an hour right now. They're kind of trending with the minimum wage increases. And then we also have some library positions that are part-time, but we don't have a significant amount of trouble recruiting for those either.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't a hole, because I know in the past, Parks and Rec specifically has often struggled to fill part-time positions. So.
They are covered very well this summer.
Yeah.
We're very,
Very
thankful
happy
for
about
that.
that.
Yes.
I was just going to add, one thing that we also don't want to do is artificially inflate the cost for positions and stuff too, because then our regional peers have to react to that as well.
Good point. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think, let's see. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I think that's the only note that I made that I had a question on. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
For doing this and for bringing it to us.
Supervisor Bone.
On page 4, I had a couple of questions. Talk about reclassifying specific jobs to align with survey results. Like, where else do you put housekeepers? I don't understand what that really means.
It means that we looked at our peer groups that were studied by the Berkeley group, and we looked at how much they were paying housekeepers. Our housekeepers were our lowest paid employees, and they were not paid a competitive wage. They were not paid anywhere close to $15 an hour, so that was a primary category that got increased. Does that answer your question?
What does reclassify actually mean?
It means move them to a different grade. So
I gotcha. Okay, I gotcha.
Okay.
But you also have sheriff's deputies. I thought we paid our sheriff's deputies pretty well. Not fantastically, but in general, around the region, pretty well.
We had been. Other jurisdictions are increasing their rates. We're competing for that specific road deputy kind of position right now, and they needed to be reclassified to stay competitive, especially with the two towns. That was one of the benefits of getting our study after the towns came out, was to make sure that we could be competitive with them.
And I can tag on that the deputies were one of the key positions that we saw due to some of the other localities increasing their pay and moving them up in the pay bands. Oop, I said bands, grades, sorry. Those of us that have been doing this a while, we've called them grades, we've called them bands, we've called them everything. But in order to be competitive and retain the best and the brightest, we had to move those up.
We were having a hard time recruiting those positions.
Supervisor Bone, can I ask just one question? Did you say rogue deputies?
Road,
Oh.
road, you know.
We don't want those.
No, road.
Okay, road. Okay, thank you.
Not sergeants or lieutenants, not
Okay.
road.
Okay.
And no, you may not interrupt my questioning ever again.
I'm sorry.
Just kidding. And then I don't understand what internal equity means.
Internal equity is the compression part. So when we looked, the Berkeley group did this scatter graph thing that Craig and I really loved, and Clay, didn't love it quite as much as us, but it showed us, it showed a dot for every employee in our system, and there were a whole bunch, there were years of service, and then where they were on the scale. There were a whole bunch of people down here that had lots of years of service, 5 to 8 years, that were making the same amount of pay as entry level for that position. So that's the compression internal equity part, spreading people out based on their length of service with the county.
We're recognizing those years of service have value and separating those employees somewhat from the lower or younger, still wrong word, years
Less
of less
experienced.
service. Thank you. It's 10 o'clock, sorry.
I understand your explanation. I don't understand the term internal equity and how it relates.
Equity internally to the county compared to, not equity with our peers, but equity just within our plan.
I gotcha. Okay, I gotcha. And then you said it was a costly factor.
Because on the last slide, the 1.2 whatever.
Okay,
That
I
was
gotcha.
90% of the
Okay.
cost was for that.
Okay. On slide 7, why would the plan adjustments be reflected in the July 15 paychecks when they pay for the last half of June?
That's a good question. Well, because we budget on a cash basis, it's just like our pay raises that are approved in the budget, and the budget is on a cash basis. So as soon as the budget is approved for July 1st, we reflect that in the first paycheck for employees. Not all employees are in tune with the fact that their July 15th paycheck is for the last half of June. So for simplicity and not having to help them not be upset about that, we would put it in their July 15th pay.
Thank you. Next slide, special contingencies. I didn't think that was, I thought that was only one-time money, but.
No, it
can't-
isn't.
Right? Uh-huh.
Right, it is not. It's ongoing money, but we haven't specifically identified that for a purpose.
Those are all my questions. Great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Biggs.
Thanks for all your work, and definitely well-deserved by our employees and long time coming. And housekeepers in particular, I was thinking about COVID and all the things that they had to do, to make it extra clean and all. So, I do realize it's very competitive. So I just want to, the 1.2 million now becomes part of the operating budget from now on.
That's correct.
So we know that that's going to be part of our budget.
Right.
That is correct.
Just wanted to point that out.
And as Angie mentioned, we had included the 939,702 in the operating budget, and then went back and identified a couple of other sources. We're still not asking to utilize all the special contingency funds. And I want to give credit to Angie and Brad and Clay and Mark and the whole group, because they have scrubbed these numbers thoroughly to make sure that we could cover what we've proposed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Again, just echoing all the hard work, thank you for providing all this to us. I'm looking at slide 5 real quick. So the previous study got us up to 65%. With these if we implement this, we would be at 100%, is that correct?
For
now?
people, for people who are on pay grades that start at $50,000 or less, which that's 75% of our employees. So 75% of our employees would be starting at the right amount. The other 25% would be 70% of where they should be. That's not their actual pay, but that's the grade that they're on. Does that make sense?
Right, okay. And back on the slides where you're talking about the Berkeley study and all the localities, so does this make us, this gets us competitive with everybody? That's what they're comparing?
Yes,
ma'am.
Right.
Yes.
All right, very good. I don't have any other questions. Thank you so much for the work.
I got one.
Supervisor King?
You thought of one.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask about the localities, but sure you did that. On the deputies, Blacksburg's coming out on their vote tomorrow. Are we?
Yes.
We are in line with them.
Yes.
Just as long as we're there with them.
As Angie mentioned, this has taken a while to complete, but I'm really glad that it's taken a while, because in the meantime, other folks have implemented, we've gotten more information, so we're very comfortable with where this is going to place us competitively in the region.
Okay. I just know they're going, I think their meeting's tomorrow.
Right. Because they already presented their budget to their council, we know what they presented, and so that gave us a little bit of advantage when we were coming to present to you.
Thank you.
Any other follow-up?
Madam Chair, I was just going to mention that the funds for this are in, when we get to new business in a few minutes, we'll have the appropriation resolution. The funds to address this are in that appropriation resolution. So with the adoption of that resolution, you will be adopting the results of the comping class study as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Angie.
That finishes up our work session. Do I have a motion to come out of work session?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, you'll please call the roll.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Chair Blevins?
Aye.
6 ayes.
Right, items of consent.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Mr. King? Mr. King?
Aye.
Chair Blevins?
Aye.
6 ayes.
Sitting here reading.
Very good, thank you. Old business, up now is the ordinance for the bed and breakfast in short tourism rentals.
Chair Blevins, I would like to make a motion on that, that we put that off maybe to our next meeting. The speaker tonight not only was very articulate and right to the point on many issues that there was some problems, may be worth taking another look at and considering. I'm not really sure as to how we can go about that, but I think it would be worth kind of mulling over a little bit. Maybe Bree can watch the video again and get specific on it. If it's something that is of concern, then we certainly would want to do it right. So that would be my motion. That we
Have a
put it on.
motion?
I will second it.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I felt the same way. If you could get the specific information on the concerns that were raised.
Madam Clerk, you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
I also agree, and I'm glad we're not putting Bree on the spot.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Chair Blevins?
Aye.
6 ayes.
Under new business, schedule a public hearing for the relocation of the voter registrar office in central absentee precinct.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Chair Blevins?
Aye.
6 ayes.
Right. FY 2022-23 appropriation budgets.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Chair Blevins?
Aye.
6 ayes.
Okay, reports, county attorney.
No report, Madam Chair.
No reports. County administrator, Mr. Meadows.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of items. I did want to mention to you that we are currently recruiting and in the market for a planning director and an IT director. I believe the applications for planning director have closed. We're currently continuing to accept applications for IT director. So we've got plenty of work to do in the weeks ahead with those two roles. We're also currently advertising several other positions that the board approved in the budget back in April. We've gone ahead to advertise those, hoping that you would approve the appropriation resolution tonight. We will be conducting interviews in the weeks ahead. We received our second installment of ARPA funds last Thursday. We received $9,569,634.50. So that's the second allocation of the ARPA funds, as we've reviewed with you in the capital improvement program plan and some other things. We'll be coming back to you in the weeks ahead to talk about the best way to use those funds for projects moving forward with the county. So glad to see that. Also, as you leave tonight, the comprehensive annual financial reports, and I know that's not what they're called anymore, but that's what I'll always call them. The CAFRs for fiscal year 21 are in the back. That was a long time coming, but as you are well aware with COVID and the grant funds and all the other challenges we had, it took a while to get that completed, but those are back there for your taking this evening. And finally, just wanted to remind everyone that next Monday is the Juneteenth holiday and county offices will be closed for that day. And last but not least, thank you so very much for the support for this comp and class study. I was at the VLGMA annual conference last week, and a number of communities are going through the same exercise right now. This market has become very challenging. Finding and attracting and keeping good local government employees is what it's about for providing the best quality of service we can, and we really appreciate your support for our employees. Thank you.
Very good. All right. We'll start off here with Supervisor's report. Supervisor King.
She skipped you.
I'm gonna go this way.
I don't have no report, but I do just want to tell you how much I appreciate Angie and Brad and everybody for working on that class study. I mean, employees really deserve it. And I do want to say congratulations to Auburn High School for all their state champions. And each month they done really well. And we are proud of every student in Montgomery County. Every student, you are what makes this county so popular to live in. And we do appreciate you. That's all.
Thank you. Supervisor Fidzikowski.
Yeah, I was going to lead off with that story. You beat me to it. Yeah, Eastmont girls soccer team is state champions again 2 years in a row. Another undefeated season. It's pretty amazing. Their first runner-up game, they played against West Point High School out on the other side of the state, and that was a very tough game. Wasn't won until the last 2 minutes. Wow. So it's very, very tough game. Then the most amazing thing happened. For the state championship, they played the Auburn girls soccer team. So 2 of our high schools competed for the state championship. I think that is just, it's just awesome. I don't know how often that happens in places, but it was very good competition. They deserved it. They've done very well. Look forward to 3 years in a row now. So that's all I have.
Very good. Supervisor Vaughn.
I know Blacksburg teams have won too. I just don't know which ones. So congratulations, young men and women. 4 things. Juneteenth celebration at Christiansburg Institute this coming Saturday, 4 to 8. Summer solstice on Saturday, this Saturday, in downtown Blacksburg. Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Even if you don't have any children, you've been fathers to children. And then lastly for tonight, Give Local NRV is next Wednesday. That's when all or most all of the nonprofits in the New River Valley will be raising funds. If you're interested in donating on that day, often your donation will be matched dollar for dollar, sometimes dollar for $3. So go on to Give Local NRV, and it's funneled through the Community Foundation of the New River Valley, and please bring out the support. Thank you.
Supervisor DeMotts.
Unfortunately, the Christiansburg Institute Juneteenth has been canceled. Yeah, they posted on their Facebook very recently, due to unforeseen circumstances that are beyond the control of CI, Inc., and the Hill School Community Center, we have had to make the very difficult decision to cancel Juneteenth, Lift Every Voice. So unfortunately, that event is not going to proceed as scheduled. And then I also, for the, we had the scheduling the public hearing for the relocation of the registrar's office and central absentee precinct. I would love to hear, or at least have some information to provide about Blacksburg Transit access to that site, just to answer. I still have some lingering questions about making sure that people can use public transportation to get there if they don't have another way of getting to the voter registrar's office. I know that we will go above and beyond, but if we could just reach out to the BT and ask them, and that's all that I have.
Thank you. Vice Chair Biggs?
Only thing I would add is that, the Virginia Tech men's baseball team and the Virginia Tech women's softball team really put us on the map in a lot of ways, and we had a lot of folks coming into our county and into our town and spending money, which was really good, and also flying into the airport so we could get the fuel from, so I was really excited about that. So for those of you that didn't get caught up in watching all that, it did get to you. It's like you had to watch the next game, and you had to, everybody was really into it. It was great. So gives us something to think about for next year too. Maybe we can build on that. So that's it.
Very good. I'd like to also echo congratulations to all of our student athletes. Again, some state championships, Auburn tennis, softball, Eastmont for soccer. So we've got lots of congratulations to all of our student athletes, and of course Virginia Tech baseball and Virginia Tech softball. Wanted to also shout out congratulations to Montgomery County Relay of Life. Excellent event this past Friday, and it's so wonderful to see so many families, businesses, and organizations come together to support and find a cure for cancer and to support the survivors. So Donna Christian and the Montgomery County Relay for Life, they did an excellent job. Also wanted to congratulate our finance department on their 34th consecutive, if that's correct, award. We appreciate all that they do and all the many hours, that especially during budget season, that they work for us, but then just helping out with the comp and classification study too, and all of our employees for their hard work. Several things to remind you of. Our RSVP is having a fundraiser bingo night this Tuesday evening, so I encourage everyone to check that out. And also a reminder that the Sheriff's Department will host the Effort event on Saturday, June the 25th, and that's an excellent event, wonderful community relationship, and we just want everybody to be aware of that and check that out on the Sheriff's website. I think that is on there, correct? Yeah, very good. And that is all we have. We'll stand adjourned. Thank you all. I don't know whose pad this was, but I'm going to